It's my great pleasure to welcome to VC++, Mckeever Conwell II, or Mac the VC on Twitter. Mac, can you tell the audience about yourself?
Yeah, so thank you for having me on, David. I'm Mckeever Conwell II, Mac the VC on Twitter. My quick backstory is I'm a software engineer by trade. I spent 7 years as a government contractor supporting the Department of Defense with a top secret clearance. I then went on to have two startups. One was an exit, one wasn't, so I had a win and a loss. After that, I spent a year doing marketing, working for a marketing firm that specialized in e-commerce. And then I spent 4 years working for the state of Maryland for the Maryland Technology Development Corporation, or TEDCO, which is essentially the investment arm for the state of Maryland. My first year there, I was on the seed investment team, sourcing deals, conducting due diligence as part of the investment committee. But when they hired me in 2016, they were having issues of investing in minority-led startups. And so I helped lead an initiative to create a pre-seed fund to invest in women and minority-led companies. In 2019, the state of Maryland put $1 million in the annual budget to make it a long-term fund in the state. It is the first and only state-backed pre-seed fund for women and minorities in the country. And then I also spent the year doing portfolio development, working with companies across the 9 different funding programs, the TEDCO. And a month ago, I quit that job to start a venture firm called RareBreed Ventures. So that's me.
Fantastic. So there's a lot to unpack in that, and I'm gonna start with the arc with the state of Maryland and TEDCO. And I think it's interesting to me from 2 perspectives in particular. One is doing outreach to minority founders, and the other is how can states and governmental agencies generally move the needle in the startup space, because sometimes the speed and chaos of a startup doesn't mesh well with the dynamics of the government. So tell us about that. Tell us what worked in government, and in particular for governmental officials in the audience that are looking to make this kind of change in their ecosystem. What can they advocate for their government to do?
Well, TEDCO is an interesting model because it's an economic development firm. So they care about job creation, but it's funded through the state. And the whole purpose is to help build up the entrepreneurial ecosystem. TEDCO was originally founded to help commercialize technologies coming out of our research institutions. So really to help with tech transfer.
Right.
And over time kind of morphed into this more funding organization. And what I would say is making the argument to your local government of how helping to build up high growth tech companies can help spur job creation and bring in talent to your state or to your local municipality shouldn't be a hard one. Like from an economic development standpoint, it makes sense, right? Because we know the #1 driver in jobs is small businesses, right? It's just new businesses being created.
Right.
And so the ability to help seed several companies a year can lead to some really amazing outcomes, right? What I would say on the other side about the reaching minority founders, that's not so much of a governmental question as much as it is just a fundamental question of, for any organization out there looking to engage with minority communities, it's not enough to say that you want to invest or you want to support those communities. It's not enough to say you have an open door policy. And
Right.
that's where a lot of these programs fail. They say, hey, we have open door policy. Anybody can come here. We want to help everybody. That's great. And that sounds good, but that's not enough. What you really need to have is you need to take the time to go out those doors and interface with that community and let those people know that you exist and that you're there to support. It may be uncomfortable at times. You may feel out of place, but it's necessary if you want to move the needle. It is what you have to do. The reason why the program we had in the state was so successful is that me and my colleagues spent a lot of time out in the communities. It's not enough to put a post on Facebook or on LinkedIn or on Twitter or to let people know you're doing an event supporting diversity and inclusion. Because at the end of the day, you're only talking to the network that you already have.
Right.
Then fundamentally grow your network or grow the group of people you're trying to reach. You have to go where they are.
Right.
And so, that's going to those communities, going to those events, speaking at different chamber of commerce, speaking at, organizations that support small businesses in those communities, you got the Urban League, you got the NAACP. A lot of cities have a Latin Economic Development Corporation that you can go speak to.
Right.
I've gone to meetups like Lesbians Who Tech. I am a VC looking for tech founders. There's no reason for me to not go to an event like that where there's going to be women and individuals there who could be creating tech businesses, right?
Right.
I've gone to those events. It was uncomfortable. I was afraid to make a mistake or say the wrong thing.
Sure.
But in every one of those instances, I went in and I told everybody who I was, why I was there, that I was there to be an advocate, and that I wasn't going to be perfect. And if I made a mistake, don't yell at me, don't curse me out. Just let me know I made a mistake, and I will do my best to not make that mistake again. And people will accept you with open arms. People will allow you to come in and be a part as long as you're very authentic. And you got to be okay being uncomfortable in moments.
Yeah, and I think humility helps too. If you're there, I'm here. I'm new to the community, and I'm here to learn. But this is what I'm trying to do, and I think we want you to be a part of our community. It goes a long way.
Yes.
So one of the themes I've heard from some of the other speakers in the conference is when you look at groups that traditionally are undercapitalized, one way to think about fixing that is to think of them as not just undercapitalized, but under-networked, and helping them get access to the tools and the connections that will give them the ability to flow in those networks and to make connection. Can you talk a little bit about what kinds of things you see beyond community outreach and showing up that people can do to make that happen?
I mean, it's just what you said, right? Like giving opportunities for underrepresented, individuals to have a seat at the table, to be speakers at events, to be part of like planning committees, to, get on stage at pitch competitions and things like that. To make intros to, potential customers and partners.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, to your point, it's not just about being undercapitalized or having lack of access to capital, but it's being under networked and having lack of access to networks, because capital and networks kind of go hand in hand, right?
They do.
Like if you don't have a network that has access to capital, then you don't have access to capital, right? That's kind of how that works. So
absolutely.
And a lot of the support. So, when we started the pre-seed fund for women and minority-led startups at the state of Maryland, one of the things that I spent a lot of time doing was I already knew that they were behind the curve on some things and that there were going to be biases against them.
Mm-hmm.
But I also knew that as long as they had enough traction and growing fast enough, a lot of that stuff could fall by the wayside, right?
Yep.
And one thing I could do to help them get to that point was by being a de facto biz dev person for them and helping them make those connections, by making introductions, by making my network open to them. And that's been really impactful for some of the companies that we've supported, right? It is, as an early stage investor, which is the bias I have for everything I talk about,
right?
It's almost, it has to be a part of my job to be good at making those kind of connections and helping grow my founders' networks. And that's for any founder, but the underrepresented ones especially, because they probably already don't have the network to get to like the head of global partnerships for Twitter or
Sure.
the head of ed tech for AWS.
Sure.
Like, they don't have those networks, but I do.
Right.
And so, like it's my job to make sure they have access to that. And when you open up those networks to those individuals, they don't perform any differently than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so being proactive and being a part of the solution, I think, is critical.
So you do a lot of mentoring, and one of the other ways to help people get the most out of a network is to make sure that they have the venture literacy, the fluency with the jargon and the insider baseball stuff that goes on. How do you do that? What works the best? And how can others that want to take up that mentorship role, what advice would you have to them?
I do a lot of, if for companies that aren't portfolio companies or companies I haven't invested in, I do a lot of one-offs.
Yeah,
I do a lot of like, I might have a few extra hours in the day, so I'll just put on Twitter like, hey, I'm gonna have an Ask Me Anything session,
right,
you know, sign up, right? And I'll get like 15 to like 40 people who will sign up, and I'll do a session on the weekend. If I'm more intentional about it, I'll give people like a week notice, heads up, and we'll get like 50 or 60 people coming on. Um, I make sure that my emails is open, my DMs are open. Anybody can reach out to me, and I don't get back to everybody, right? Like my emails and my DMs get flooded, so I can't get everybody.
sure,
I try to get as many as I can, and so I'll do a 30-minute meeting with you, right? Like you can get a 30-minute meeting with me, and in that meeting, I will do my best to be as honest and authentic with you as possible. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm not going to lie to you,
hmm
you know. And I like it I tried my best for it to not be transactional. Like I know
right,
for a lot of founders, they hit me up and they want to talk about money, and that's
right,
okay. But I want to talk about their business. I want to talk about them. I want to know how they got here. I want to know what's something I can leave them that's helpful. Because if you just want to talk to me about money, any given quarter, I'm gonna see like 300 companies, maybe more. Of that, I'm gonna fund maybe one, maybe two.
right.
So more often than anything, it's going to be a no for most of the companies I meet. So beyond that, how can I be helpful? What advice can I give you? What kind of strategy can we talk about? What experience can I share with you? What story can I share with you? And I try to not do that on a daily basis. Like I meet with like anywhere like 2 to 4 companies a day, sometimes
Yeah,
a whole lot more. I'm also very active with a lot of different incubators and accelerators, right? I'm always offering to do office hours. It's a great way to get deal flow as an investor, right?
hmm
But it's also a great way to give back. And so like paying it forward, something is really important to me.
yeah.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the multitude of people who gave me their time and were really supportive of me, right? And so I just try to do that back.
When you were at TEDCO, how much did you look at similar programs in other states and do a kind of comparison of these are things we can learn from elsewhere? Do you have a sense of the state of play across the country?
No, so the thing was so Teco's been around now going on 23 years, 22 years, something
hmm
like that. And so when we started the pre-seed fund, I really used the other programs that we already had in-house as kind of my as what I looked for the mirror, right?
Right.
So I really didn't look at what was going on in other states. But since we started that program, I've had other states reach out to me.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I've had several conversations with the folks at Invest Detroit. I love those folks. They do a lot of great work.
Yeah.
The folks in Launch, Tennessee, they're doing amazing work.
Yeah.
Individuals like that who have reached out to me and asked me about our program. But when we started it, I wasn't really looking at other states. I was looking in house to see how we set up our program so that the proposal for the pre-seed fund we were creating kind of looked and felt like programs we already did. Right, I didn't want to make
Right.
something that was completely different.
Right.
I wanted to create a program that fit within the realm of the other things we already did in house.
And what kind
Um,
of metrics did you use to report results out to when you're in the state government and you're part of a much bigger machine? How do you report back up to the budget process
right.
about impact?
So we have budget hearings yearly, every year. I wasn't called in every year, but we would do an impact study every year around job creation. We would talk about the companies we invest in, the jobs they created. We'd also talk about impact because we did a lot of life sciences companies. So
Right.
companies that were doing things that were like creating therapeutics that were impacting people's lives. Um, um, And we did a lot of information around like business growth. So like, the valuations of companies had grown, the revenue they were making was growing. But more than anything, the thing we really harped on was job creation,
Yeah.
bringing talent into the state, creating high paying jobs, and even especially for rural parts of the state, creating jobs in rural part of the state. So, we might invest in a company that creates like 15 jobs in a rural city in the state, but that's a win, right?
Right.
That's not
Right.
that's not as big of a deal in the grand scheme of venture, but for the state, that's impactful. And so, we've reported a lot of things like that.
So talk about moving from Tedco to RareBreed. Give us the, what impelled you to do that, and your, I guess your second month now, is that?
Yeah.
So
It's been about,
what's the deal?
it's a little more than a month since I left working for the state, and
Yeah.
really, I had made a decision a while ago that I wanted to start a fund, and it just so happened that like timing came up, and I had an advisor of mine offer me some money to kind of get it kickstarted. But the reason why I decided to start a fund was there are a lot of founders out there that I was meeting that I wanted to support but couldn't. Because even at the state, I couldn't just unilaterally say I want to invest in this company.
Right.
I would meet founders creating really amazing things or really amazing ideas that were so early, they were even too early for our program, right? Or so unique and different that other people just couldn't get it.
Right.
And I saw founders go through extreme means to try to bring you know, their visions to life. We've seen founders, sell their cars to get patents done.
Mm-hmm.
Very impactfully, there was a founder, a woman who became a surrogate mother to get enough money to start building her prototype.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
like
that's an incredible story.
those kinds of stories are amazing and heartbreaking at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to create a firm where I would never have to be part of a process that led to somebody having to make such a decision, right? Now I know at the end of the day, I'm never going to be able to make enough investments to help all those individuals, but I'm gonna be able to impact the ones that I can, and that's why I started my own firm. Like I could probably get a job at a firm and
Sure.
make some good money and stuff, but I probably couldn't be able to make the same kind of impact and do the same kind of work. So
Mm-hmm.
that was really critical to me.
And can you just expand a little bit on, so if I'm a founder, what would make me a good fit for RareBreed?
So RareBreed, we look for two things. So we're a pre-seed fund. We will do some seed investments. And so we like to be the first check or one of the first checks in, and we like to lead, and we like to write slightly larger checks than what you typically see at pre-seed. So our target check size is 250,000. So
Right.
that's a nice check for, somebody
Yeah.
really early. But we look for two things in the founders that we invest in. If it's a software or tech-enabled company, we like to see a clearly repeatable or unique customer acquisition strategy.
Right.
You don't need to have a lot of customers, but you need to know how you get your customers, right? Like I
Right.
don't care how great your product is. I want to know that you know how to move the needle and get people in the door,
Yeah.
right? And then the second thing that we like is physical products, typically in consumer markets that have lacked innovation in 10 or more years. These kind of these legacy industries where the industry is just hungry for something new. Those are the things that we really look for, because those two founders, especially from the earliest stages, tend to be out of the box thinkers and out of the box problem solvers. And so we are optimizing for, investing in those unique entrepreneurs who are very creative in their problem solving.
Yeah.
And so that's really RareBreed. And we do say we invest outside the major tech hubs. So we invest outside of Silicon Valley, New York, and Massachusetts. We will make investments in those areas opportunistically because you can find great founders anywhere. But the whole point is you can find great founders
Right.
anywhere.
Right. And the undercapitalized markets have the untapped opportunities.
Exactly.
So just following up on the earlier mentoring discussion, now that maybe you've done RareBreed and you're super active on Twitter, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I see you offering to do mentoring for people interested in launching their own VCs. So you're 2 months into the journey and you're already out there. Talk about what impels you to do that and what those conversations are like, because I certainly believe that changing who writes the checks does more to change the power structure than anything.
I think it's giving back. And one thing that I figured out, like, so as I started going through the process of fundraising and looking to raise a fund, I was meeting a lot of other emerging managers, these contemporaries of mine, and I was realizing a lot of them didn't have a whole lot of experience, doing investing or writing
Right.
checks. And there were just like some basic, simple things that, some folks hadn't done yet or hadn't learned yet. And so I just like, okay, there's a gap here. And so anything I can do to help close that gap, I'm willing to do. And so I just started, talking to people about VC. I also find that a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand what VC is or how it works because we never talk about it.
Right.
So I try to spend my time, demystifying venture capital for people. And, that led to other, aspiring VCs asking me like, how do you do this? How does this work? And so I've just taken the time to talk about it and share that with them. And for some people, it's really enlightening. For some people, it's engaging. For some people, it's deflating, right? Like venture capital isn't as glamorous as everybody makes it out to be, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it's an industry that's really easy to fail at.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, I think you've been incredibly successful and effective at building your brand and your business on Twitter. I mean, it's how we met, and I can certainly say what you said earlier about being accessible is there. I mean, I just reached out and bang, we started talking. But I think you've really done something extraordinary and exceptional. And how can founders or investors that want to get something new going learn from the way you've been able to tap social media?
So it's weird because like I don't see anything that I did as being unique or special, right?
Uh-huh.
Like if you read my tweets, I talk a lot about, I try to give advice to founders. I talk a little bit about venture capital and how it works. I talk very little. Every now and then you'll hear me talk about sports and talk about the Ravens. Anything Baltimore, I'm here for.
Uh-huh.
And I try to be honest and authentic,
Despite
right?
the Chiefs game.
Yeah, despite the Chiefs, yes. And I try to be honest and authentic, right?
Right.
I share some of my vulnerability sometimes, so it's not always great. Everybody, it's not always perfect.
Uh-huh.
And that seems to resonate with people. I tell people, when you think about tweeting, don't ever overthink it. You go to a meeting, we all go to meetings and we come out of the meeting and we'll have like one nugget that's like, picking at us or something we leave with thinking about,
Right.
tweet it.
Yeah.
Right. And people ask like, how do you get he's like, how do you say everything you want to say in a tweet? I don't. Like
Right.
I start off and I type everything I want to type and then I start paring it down till I get something that fits.
Yeah.
Right. It's never going to be perfect. You're going to have tweets that people don't agree with. You'll get people who reach out to you who are negative. But at the end of the day, it's just as long as you put out content that is useful to people, you'll get a following. And all that means is putting out content about the things that you know and that you've learned. Everybody's an expert at something. Everybody does something really well. I can tell you when I was in high school, I worked at a crab shack. That was my job in high school. I know so much about crabs, it's ridiculous. There's plenty of content I could put on Twitter about how to go about cooking crabs that people would find valuable and I would get some kind of following. So everybody's an expert at something. Just feel free to, like, the stuff that you talk to your friends about, a little insights you give here or there, just tweet it and you'll gain a following. That's what's worked for me.
So do you have any last words of advice around if you're a founder or an investor and you're looking to change the playing field, to drive inclusion, what should you have top of mind?
Don't be afraid of the no's. You're going to get a lot of no's. Don't be afraid to be different. It's okay to be different. And go in understanding that the road ahead of you may be tougher than the others around you, but don't compare yourself to them. Don't compare your journey to them. Don't use that as an excuse, right? Everybody has their own way and their own challenges to get there. Keep working hard with a little bit of luck. get into the right networks, and you'll get to where you're trying to be, right? It's not going to be easy. And I will also say not everybody deserves to do this. I have a lot of people like, yeah, this needs to be easier for people to get into. Yes, it needs to be open so that everybody has the opportunity to, but everybody doesn't deserve to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, being a VC means you manage money, and lots of money, either for individuals or for groups of people who don't have a lot of money. Like if you raise money from a pension fund, that means there are people who work their whole careers to put money into that fund so that they can have a retirement.
It's a
If you,
solemn responsibility.
it is a true responsibility. Like nobody owes you that. The only thing they owe you is the opportunity for you to showcase your skills that you can do it. Right? Don't ever forget that. Like it's still up to you to build up the skill set and be good at what you do, whether you're entrepreneur or investor. Right? Nobody owes you anything. But put in the time, put in the effort, get good at your craft, and it may not work out. Like hard work's not always the answer, right? You always need some other little things along the way. But as long as you put yourself in the right position and you work hard at it, you'll give yourself a shot.
Mac, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. It's been fun.